Today on the Ever Onward podcast, we have Kelley Packer, a longtime friend, former legislator, ran for lieutenant governor in the state, and now has been serving for 6 years as the executive director of the Idaho Association of Cities. She most recently has formed a new group called the Idaho Contraceptive Education Network, or ICEN. It will be great to get caught up with Kelley on all things about cities and government, and then this important initiative that she has started that surrounds contraception and protecting that right in Idaho. Kelley Packer. How are you been?
I've been doing really well. Yep. Doing
Family's
great.
good?
Family's really, really doing well. All my kids are married and having kids. I have 9 grandkids, and life's wonderful.
Oh, my
There's nothing
goodness.
better than grandkids.
Amen to that.
Yeah. My mom used to always say, grandkids are your reward for not killing your kids. And I really took exception to that because I was one of the kids, right? But now I get it. Yeah.
Are they close by?
I've got one daughter, and 3 of my grandchildren are here in Caldwell.
Okay.
The others are still in Southeast Idaho, but they're still close, either Pocatello or Shelley. And they're wonderful. I go home a lot.
It's the best.
Yep. Agreed.
It's the best. I have 3, and man, every day, it's funny because my daughter, Brooklyn, that has 3, I used to always say when she was little, a day without the ditty ain't a day worth living. That was her nickname.
Oh, that's cute.
And now it's kind of transitioned to her kids. It's like
It's
the day without seeing
amazing,
those
right?
kids. It's amazing.
But there's a reason we have kids when we're young. I had my 4-year-old and 1-year-old granddaughter and grandson last weekend for an extended stay, and oh my goodness, I was like, I'm too old for this.
We went to we went down. Brooklyn and Matthew went to. We went down to Lagoon last weekend, but Cash sleeps with us every night in the hotel, and he's our guy. Right?
And how old's he?
5. But
5.
man, that kid's internal alarm clock. It doesn't matter how hard you go the day before, what time you go to bed, 5:45, and it's like, Papa, it's time.
I love it. Let's go.
Yeah, so I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
They leave and you just like go, oh, I'm old.
Yes.
Well, thank you for coming on. I have fond memories of our time traveling around the state together, and you're in your RV.
My big RV.
Yeah, so for people listening, Kelley ran for lieutenant governor in 18.
18, yep.
The same year I was running for governor. Mm-hmm. So we went to all the same Lincoln days together. And
it was a trek, wasn't it?
Yeah,
lot of work.
Listened to each other's speeches.
Over and over.
Hundreds and hundreds of times. It's really funny. Matthew used to be able to do it. So Janice McGee and Anna Witt, and I still, to this day, there was, how many of you were in the race?
There was 5, and that's the whole reason.
There were 5 in the race, right?
Yep.
She won. Mm-hmm. But I still swear, I would put any amount of money on the only reason she won was it was the only clearly female name.
Agreed. I actually had somebody say to me, why don't you change your name to just Y instead of EY? And I was like, well, because this is what my parents named me, and I don't want the campaign that, I don't want the election that much.
Anyway, Matthew used to be able to do kind of a spot-on impression of her speech, because you hear each other's speeches the whole time, right?
Yep.
Anyway, he would break into that for years afterwards, and it would always be just the crowd favorite. But anyway, it was fun. Got to see Idaho, got to love Idaho.
Oh, beautiful state.
Yeah, and
yes.
Some good times, good memories, and you meet people in ways that you just wouldn't get to know them otherwise. And so then you went from there to now you've been the director of the Idaho Association of Cities for
going on 6 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been wonderful.
And I know that's not kind of what you're here to talk about today, but tell us a little bit about the Idaho Association of Cities.
Oh, it's an amazing organization that's been around for 78 years now, and it's been an honor to be their executive director for the last 5.5. From the campaign, I actually went and led an agency for Governor Little for 1.5 years, and then had some of my mayors from when I was a legislator from down in Southeast Idaho area reach out and say, we've been without an executive director for a number of months, and we'd love to have you come and lead that organization, if you would. And it took me a minute to make that decision, but I'm glad I did. We get to help them with all of their education and technical assistance and support, but also really important role is the advocacy that we do for them at the State House and in D.C. on city issues. And there's a lot of them, right? And very important to everyone.
Yeah, and you're doing such a great job. I also, it's strange because people, you know the community you live in, and most of our population is here in the Treasure Valley, and just the way it is. So when we think of mayors, we think of Mayor Simison and,
Right.
and Mayor McLean. And,
Sure.
And, you just think of these big city mayors and the great work they do. One of the things for me when I traveled around and met with people, I met with almost every mayor in every town we ever went to. And the job is heavy.
It's huge. You figure out of our 197 cities, 165 have 5,000 or less people.
Yeah.
It's a part-time mayor,
So 165 have 5,000 or less, part-time mayor. And
part-time council,
and
trying to just
I remember
take care of their
being in
community.
cafes with these guys and gals and sitting down and saying, hey, what are your challenges? And a lot of times they would like break out into tears and they would
It's
just say,
tough.
hey, we have a water sewer treatment plant that we have a school that's falling down. We have roads that we can't fix. We have staff we can't keep. We have, and honestly, you would want to help, but you would like go,
Where do I start?
I'm so sorry. I'll
Right.
pray for you, and I don't know what to do. other
Right.
than
And
that.
that's why the association is so important, because we work really hard trying to educate legislators about the policy decisions they make and how that impacts, a lot of times negatively, those communities that are trying to hold things together, and our businesses and our citizens, and everybody relies on that infrastructure. The city is that first core infrastructure areas that trickles out into the county and then trickles out into the state and so forth. I mean, the majority of our roads are local roads that are here in the state. The water and sewer, it's all city. You do have some sewer and water districts, but they're few and far between. It's the core of what makes up Idaho's economy.
Yeah, and I think one of the most important things you do, the advocacy work you do, is at the legislature. You served, how many terms did you serve there?
Three.
Three
3
terms.
years.
So you know how that
6 years.
process works. And
Or doesn't,
and,
as
or
the
doesn't.
case might be.
And I think one of the things that you see, like I always bring, it's a great example because in medicine, right? When you learn medicine, it's the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm, right?
Right.
And a lot of times these bills that pass are often targeted at specific issues in a specific jurisdiction, right?
Absolutely true.
And because Ada County and Canyon County are so large, or Bonneville County, some of the counties in our state are so large, you'll have a lot of these bills and legislation that will target issues that voters and constituents see as issues there. And oftentimes the downstream effects of how that legislation will affect everybody else, you're there to fight and protect and help and educate.
Absolutely. It's really a key component of what we do at the association. I mean, the other key component is then helping them, facilitate relationships and conversations with people that can help maybe make ends meet.
Yeah.
Especially in those smaller jurisdictions. But yes, that is one of the most important things we do because, like last year, we had 75 bills that came out that would impact cities either positively
75.
or negatively. And that's pretty typical.
So what are some, the bill that capped,
it's killing cities.
It's killing
We've
cities.
lost 3 cities since that bill passed.
yeah. So talk about that bill in a little bit. Cause I think everyone I talk to brings the bill up and they're like, this is
House Bill 389, I'll never forget the number.
And 389 was supposed to, I think the intention was, hey, we're going to try to help protect taxpayers in an event. What it really does is, and the hypocrisy is, they say growth pay for growth, but it basically
did the opposite.
Right? So you had a bill that was intended for one thing that has done the opposite thing, but it hasn't gone away. I mean,
No, because the egos that are involved in that bill won't let it
Yeah.
go away. We've had lots of conversations with them about exactly what it's doing. I mean, it passed in 2021. In 2022, we lost Atomic City, which is one of the oldest cities in Idaho, and it's now gone because they could no longer meet the revenue needs for the water and sewer treatment plant. They had put together a 5-year and 10-year plan to do improvements that were critical to the health and safety of that water and sewer system. And couldn't do it. So they had to unincorporate, which meant that went to the counties, who's not in the water and sewer business. So they had to find a private entity or a sewer and water district, I don't know which one they did, to take it over. The need doesn't go away.
Yeah.
And then in 2023, we lost Hamer. And then last year we lost Oxford. This year we have 3 looking at unincorporating because they just can't meet the need with revenues. And the way property tax was set up and worked well for over 20 years was that it was a 3% cap. We already had a cap.
You already had a cap.
Over the last 3 years, right? And then plus. And those pluses were new construction, which is growth.
Yep.
Annexation of an area that's grown in the county that's coming into the city, which is growth, or reclassification. And what they did is they took a percentage, it changed the percentage, so you can't capture 100% of the value, that only 80 or 90, depending on what we're talking about. And then they capped it at 8%. So let's say a city takes the full 3%, which most cities didn't. Usually it was around the 1.5% area. And then they bank the rest for future needs, capital improvement needs down the road. But let's just say they take the full 3%. That means they only have another 5% that they can access from those other categories. And you look like at the city of Star that's had an average of about 20% growth over the last 5-10 years. Well, if they can only take 5% of that 20% growth, who's paying for the additional service demands?
What do they say to that?
They just, it falls on deaf ears. I really can't answer that, Tommy. I don't know. It's really mind-boggling to me because I've said, really there's only 3 ways to reduce homeowner property taxes. That is to either shift and balance it different between all the different taxpayers, the corporate and utilities and homeowners, which nobody wants to do, and that's fine. Reduce services, which most people don't want to do because the bulk of the budgets in municipalities is emergency services. So you want our police, fire, or our medical ones to be reduced, right? And then the only other thing is to increase, other revenue streams, local option tax, for example, or something of that nature. And that is
the irony of this
not going to happen again because of those same folks.
Thank you for explaining it. We've talked about it before on this podcast, but the irony of all ironies is somehow the legislature is getting away with cutting police, fire. They're cutting services that people need and not allowing growth to pay for growth.
Right. And I've even said this, if our infrastructure deteriorates and, defaults completely, who pays? The state's going to ultimately pay because commerce doesn't travel on gravel roads.
Yeah.
And infrastructure businesses, the majority of businesses are in a city footprint. And they rely on the water, they rely on the sewer, they rely on the streets, for all of that.
Do you think there's like in some of these issues we're facing right now with policy that's just not good policy, is it just things have to get bad enough before there's a breaking point because otherwise they don't listen? And that's kind of, it's a
in fact, I've even said that to my members.
It's a defeatist kind of attitude,
really sad.
But it kind of like it's going to have to get really bad before they do something.
Yes. And don't get me wrong, I've sat in those seats. I know it's hard to be a legislator. It's just like any elected official. There's pros and cons to everything you do. People that want you to do something one way and another group that want you to do it. You got to make the best decision with what you've got. I get that. And it's not always easy, especially when you've got people calling, and complaining about their property taxes. I'm not criticizing them for that at all, but work together with the folks, these stakeholders, to find the right solutions instead of just making these assumptions and doing things that are harmful. And what I've started telling my members, because those elected officials at the local level are some of the best you'll ever find, I said, you've got to stop managing to the bad policy. And what I mean by that is every time something happens, they just get out the baling wire and the duct tape and they make it work and nobody knows. Yeah. And I said, you've got to stop doing that. People have got to feel it. Otherwise, it's never going to get better.
And that it's against their human nature because everyone, the old Idaho way and the heritage is, hey, you tell me I can't do it, I'll figure out a way.
Right. But we're going to go off a cliff.
Yeah.
If we don't start having real conversations about this.
Well, thank you for what you're doing. For people listening, any way that common citizen business owners can get involved to help with this, what suggestions do you have?
First and foremost, reach out to me at the Association of Idaho Cities. We're always looking for people to partner with. And then,
So the URL is Association of Idaho Cities, right there. Great website.
IdahoCities.org.
IdahoCities.org. Okay.
And it's got
IdahoCities.org.
all of our staff contact information, including mine. And I'm always willing to to have meetings with folks that are wanting to talk about infrastructure or how they can, partner with, that public-private partnership.
And then I guess the other advice would be to meet with their mayors.
Absolutely.
The one thing that I came away with my experience, and you probably had a similar experience when we were out together on the campaign trail, but you look at government efficiencies and government spending, kind of, because I think all taxpayers are worried about, hey, how are we using our taxes? How are we doing things? I think once you get to the city level, especially at those, you sit down with those folks and go through their budget, and most of the time you're like, God bless you. How on earth, how on God's green earth are you pulling this
Absolutely.
off? How are you running this city?
Absolutely.
And so I think that's, and then you have the big halves, right? And then you can start arguing, are we doing this or that or the other, whatever. And that's where a lot of this, the ethos of this stuff comes from as well. We're going to go hammer them for doing this or that or the other.
Right.
But for majority of these cities, they're not even close to having the dollars to even exist, let alone misuse or misappropriate
Right.
funds.
And there's a lot of things that are just not happening within a city jurisdiction at this point because they can't. Projects that need to get done, and they're deferring that maintenance, which is never healthy, even in our bigger cities, Meridian and Boise. Absolutely. Because of that 8% cap. It's ironic when I've shared that same thing, there's 3 ways to reduce. And I said that at an ATI conference, and I got cornered by a legislator afterwards, and they said, you forgot one. And I said, oh, really? What's that? And they said, reducing your budgets. And I said, no, that was number 2. That was the reducing of services, because there's not fluff in these budgets. Just to your point, Tommy, sit down with, you name the city, and I will make the appointment for us, and I'll go with you, and we will go through the budget. You're not going to find frivolous spending. It's just not there.
It's not there. And all of as business owners, whatever the industry we're in, you think of the constraints on costs right now, labor right now. These cities, it's that, if you look at, and this is going to sound bad, but it just is. If you look at a lot of the places we get our employees from over time, it's people that have been in cities because they're already paying them a little less. They're already constrained a little more, and they've got talented people. So they're trying to keep their talented people, and you got private industry saying, oh, so you think of the constraints on just employment.
For sure.
And keeping people. And then you got police and fire. Anyway, we could probably talk about this forever.
And I know that's not why you had me on.
But we're gonna. So IdahoCities.org. Meet with your mayor. Kelley would meet with anyone that wants to get involved or talk about this. Okay. Thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you.
You have been very involved with the Idaho Contraceptive Education Network.
Yes.
And I have followed along this has been, I think as a physician, I've been involved in a couple ways with just legislation that has passed.
Sure.
We had Roe v. Wade getting overturned. I've went and met and talked to a bunch of OBGYNs. We have owned large medical groups. We have employed OBGYN doctors. I freaking worked in an ER for a long time, right? So this is an issue that any time a change like that happens, there are going to be policies that affect people and people's lives. So as part of that, your network was set up, and I'm kind of doing an intro here, and then I'll let you talk, to say one of the concerns that everyone has had is, okay, abortion is law, and here's what's happening, and it's happening nationally in the state. How is that going to affect women's rights when it comes to contraception?
For sure.
I'll shut up and let you talk, Kelley.
Well, and that's exactly why we got involved. And I'll be honest, it was because I am so passionate about this the Access to Contraceptive Care, and how it's impacted my own life as well as my daughter's lives, and will at some point my granddaughters, that I got involved because, going back to what we were just talking about, I sit on 18 different boards on behalf of cities. So I didn't need one more board, right? But when I was
18?
18.
I'm going to stop feeling sorry for myself.
Yeah, because you've got everything from, local roads to water and sewer and police. I mean, you sit on the post council, et cetera. I mean, 18 boards, being the city representative. And so I didn't need one more. But as I talked with a group of friends and amazing individuals about this particular issue after Roe v. Wade was overturned, we knew that we had to do something at least to protect what we currently had as far as access to contraceptive, but also to hopefully increase that access. And so that's the whole reason why Laurie and Tara and I banded together, and we're co-founders of ICEN, and have worked hard over the last couple of years to ensure that important healthcare tool didn't get
So let's get to
lost.
Let's get to the nitty gritty of
Sure.
this. Is that all right for listeners?
You
and
bet.
then we'll ask how people can help. So, with abortion, it very charged issue
for sure.
with a lot of people. In fact, people say just avoid that topic because people have very strong feelings and you just don't know where they sit. This is not even talking about that.
Nope.
What we're talking about is, and by the way, I think pro-life, pro-choice, there's a lot of things back and forth. It would be a great discussion anyway. But when you pass legislation, especially from a physician's point of view, where the mother's health and well-being cannot be taken care of, that's another issue that we're not talking about today. We're talking about contraception and the idea that if someone in their belief system believes that life begins at conception, egg versus
Yes. Yep.
fertilization, then birth control is illegal.
That's what we want to avoid.
But there are those opinions. Just that's the
For sure,
that's-
and they've always existed.
They've always existed, and so the idea, and so most birth controls, just to get really specific, stop implantation of a fertilized egg.
Right.
Almost all of them. So whether it's an IUD or the pill, or that's what it does, right? And so the irony of this is most people, their families, their loved ones, their themselves, their daughters, their granddaughters have all used birth control successfully. And,
Yes.
and it's part of planning and it's part of life. But the problem is there is a effort out there to push that choice that someone can make on family planning and birth control away because they're pulling it into the abortion issue. Right.
And that's what we are trying to help avoid. We need to decouple those two conversations because contraceptives will help. It doesn't terminate life like an abortion does. It keeps it from happening.
Yes.
Right. And there's a big distinction. They are two separate issues, and we need to make sure that we don't conflate those. But that's what some would like to do. And if we allow that to happen, and that's another reason why we got involved, is to make sure that education was available on our website, that you can take a look at all the varied types of contraceptives, because there's a lot of different types, and find out about that type of contraceptive and make more informed decisions about how you thoughtfully plan for your family, and or not, depending on all of your varied needs.
Sure.
But it's not just about that, and that's another thing that we have really tried to stress. There are teenage kids, regardless of religious belief, that have been put on those to help with other things, like cysts and endometriosis, and lots of even painful menstruation, including my own daughter. It was funny because
including my daughters.
Yes.
I mean, this is
And so
it's a medical treatment for hormone regulation, for whether it be painful menses.
So many other things.
Absolutely.
It's about women's health.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
And then them being able to make also thoughtful decisions about family planning, which is so critical. Whether it's because they're in school and they want to delay it for a time, or whether they want to delay in between kids because of financial constraints, whatever the case might be. Yeah. There's a lot of really important reasons why contraceptives are so important, and we need to protect that access, if not increase it.
Let's talk about some of the resources. So again, here's the URL. It's Idaho.
IdahoCEN.com.
CEN.com. IdahoCEN.com. And walk us through some of the resources that are out there for people that may be able to go find them and how they can share them.
Well,
there's your board.
Wow. Yep. And great women. I love serving with those two ladies. They are phenomenal. And we're also very blessed to have a group at Atlas Strategic Communications with Amanda Watson in charge that help us with the messaging and keeping this website going. But one can join the network so that we can help build the strength across the state, so that when we are in the advocacy season and might need to find stories and or support from the average citizen in reaching out to legislators, that's really important. So we encourage folks to join us for that very reason. It's also been a really good outlet for people to tell their stories, and that is such a heartwarming experience for me as a board member to be able to read how contraceptives have helped women of all ages. Through different things, whether it's a health struggle or whether it's proper planning for their future. But then you can also go and find on our website actual factual medical information about each contraceptive type, so that you can learn more and you can be prepared before you go in and talk with your physician. And it explains out how each works, including those for men, as you can see. And so it's a great site, and we hope that people will get more involved in this important conversation.
Isn't some of this a little counterintuitive? If you're pro-life and you're anti-abortion and you're anti...
I would say just the opposite, because to me, at least this is the way I look at it. And often I have said to family and friends, it's a no-brainer to me that if you have access to contraceptives for whatever reason, it's going to help decrease unnecessary abortions.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, that's what's weird. It's like, yes, we should be encouraging all of this education.
Oh, I misunderstood. I thought you were saying something just the opposite. I was like, this helps us do just the opposite.
Like, this is fully harmonizes with not having abortions.
Oh, right. In fact, if you're pro-life,
you should be pro-contraception.
Yes.
I guess... I remember the first time I heard about you putting this group together, and my first thought was, well, wait a minute. I know Kelley. I know she's
very pro-life.
Very, very, very pro-life, and we're on the campaign trail together. And then I'm like, yeah, why do we need this thing? Why do we need this network? Because it should be hand in hand with reducing unwanted pregnancies.
And that's why we need it, because there's this false narrative out there right now.
Yeah.
At the national level, and it's starting to trickle into our state, and we wanted to be ahead of the game. When we saw that happening, we said, no, we need Idahoans to have factual information about this so that they can stop that false narrative, because that's harmful. And the other thing, we were very intentional. This shouldn't be a partisan issue.
No.
But you'll notice our board's made up of 3 Republican women. Laurie served in the House and Senate, or House and ran for the Senate as a Republican. I served in the House as a Republican. Tara also ran for the Senate as a Republican. And that was intentional because, unfortunately, there are some Republicans that are trying to make this a partisan issue. And so we said, we as Republican women want to take this stand and say, no, this isn't a partisan issue. And as pro-life Republicans, we are going to be the ones to message what exactly this is.
I don't even know who's making it. You probably know the actors, but they're probably Republican men.
They could be. Some of them are, yes, I will admit that. But not all of them. I've been surprised by some of the Republican women that I've had great conversations with about this. And they are, whether it's because they've already been given this bad information and their opinion has been molded by that misinformation. It's been interesting to even have some of those conversations with women.
What this last legislative session, were there bills that were considered that were worrisome? No,
but the session before there had been some legislation to try to encourage better access for 12-month periods, 6-month or 12-month periods from insurance agents, right, or from insurance companies, I should say, to allow that. Because really, it only been you could do 3 months at a time, and especially in our rural areas, you can't always.
Yeah.
It's not always easy enough to get in and get every 3 months to get another refill on that, and so we did help encourage the passing finally of a bill that had been out there for probably 4 or 5 years running, that would increase that to a 12-month supply, which is wonderful. So we're thrilled about that. There were rumors about some bills coming out, and we always are watching it very closely this past year, but there wasn't anything specific that attacked contraceptive access. So, it's funny. That year prior, though, when we were having the conversation with different legislators, I was visiting with a gentleman from Southeast Idaho, a friend of mine that I'd served with, and he says, I just don't think I can be there. And I think probably from the same aspect that you were thinking when you saw that I was going to be on this board, right? He's very pro-life, and he was saying, I just don't want to encourage that type of, promiscuity or whatever. And I says, well, you know what? It's not just about that. And I said, I shared the story about my daughter needing them because of her painful menses. And I said, so we ended up having to put her on when she was 14. And he sat back, and it was so funny to watch this aha moment with him. He said, oh, my word, I think we had to do that with my daughter, too. I better call my wife. And he does, and he gets back with me later that day. He says, yeah, I'm there. I'll support you, because I guess she basically said to him, absolutely, you will.
Is that the angle that they're taking, is that somehow birth control will
equals especially for teens and things. I'm like, well, it's not just about
are we not past that, Kelley, for hell's sakes?
We should be.
I mean, for hell's sakes.
I know, we should be. I'm like, what year is this? But yeah, not with everyone.
I mean, I know, but again, like if you truly are, if you're truly pro-life and you're not
against
abortion, then we ought to be giving tools.
Even if it is about curiosity and promiscuity, you should want that out there so that you don't have these unwanted abortions. Yes. No, we're not trying to encourage that. We're trying to encourage thoughtful conversations and education about all the varied needs and situations we all find ourselves in.
Do you guys, so website, information, join the network, do you guys have an event every year? Do you have any?
We haven't had a set time, but we've been trying to join health fairs and other things around the state, not even just here in Treasure Valley, but up north and Southeast Idaho,
and
everywhere.
Places to volunteer on here if people are interested?
Yes. As part of that joining, if you as you fill that out, then we will ask you at what level, what type of involvement do you want to share your story? Do you want to actually volunteer? Do you want to donate? I mean, there's lots of different ways people can be involved in this. Awesome. Important. One other thing I'd like to share with you that I've been so excited about is that when we first started this, so it's a couple years old now, we did a survey about access to care, and it was overwhelming. In the 70s, high 60s and 70s of people, Idahoans from all over the state, all different age brackets and gender, that believe that access to contraceptives is a very important right.
I'm like thinking to myself, it was only that? Because I'm thinking like in the world, like if you just said in my neighborhood, how many people have used birth control for whatever reason, it's got to be more than 65%. I mean,
for sure. It just depended on the question. It was overwhelming. We even got close to the 80s with some things.
I guess my view of that, I guess I uniquely was able to see 45,000 people in the ER. And so
you've lived really close to it.
I was able to live really close to this issue.
For sure.
Like every part of this issue happens real time in an emergency room. It just does. Whether it's contraception, emergency contraception, like Plan B, morning after pill, whatever you want to call it, whether it is people that have had abortions that have gone bad and they end up in the ER.
For sure.
Whether it's people that have...
You've seen the full spectrum.
I've seen the whole thing from top, and then ectopic pregnancies. The issues right now of like you've got a non-viable pregnancy, and what does that mean in the current law in Idaho? So very, very involved. But when it comes to just contraception,
right?
Like it's like the standard question with every
Agreed.
single person you meet, which is, what are you using?
Right. Agreed. And that's the other thing that's beautiful about this network is that, the reason for the varied options is because everyone's chemical makeup and needs vary, right? And so to be able to have that choice is really exciting that science has...
It's women's health.
It is.
For hell's sakes.
It is. And what works well for one might not somebody else. And you need... Sometimes there's trial and error.
Which is always interesting to me, some of these issues where we're all about like personal choice and personal freedoms and...
Except this.
Except for this.
Yep. Oh, trust me, I've said the same thing. I'm like, what?
Don't tell me I need a vaccine.
Right.
But I'm going to tell you what you can and can't do for your own contraception. Anyway.
Right.
Well, bless you for being involved in this. This is awesome.
Thank
Another
you.
great thing you're involved in, Kelley, and thanks for your service. You've got a servant's heart from. You always been this way?
Thanks to my parents.
Really?
I was raised around the philosophy that if, see a need, feel a need. In fact, even in our own home, we couldn't complain about our curfew or about, our chores or anything unless we brought a solution. Now,
What did your parents do?
Did they listen to our solutions? No, usually not. But that was just the rule. I mean, and even my dad in conversations, he would, when people would be running their mouth about their elected official or whatever, his first question was, did you vote?
Yeah.
And if you said no, he said, we're done talking because you didn't do what you could have done when it mattered most.
What did he do for work?
He was a dentist. Ironically, he was a dentist that then bought a dairy farm because he wanted to teach his kids how to work. I was 13 when we moved to small town of McCammon on a dairy farm, had about 365 acres. And I was like, we're going where to do what? Right?
I love that.
But it was the very best thing in the world for me because it taught me how to work. And there were a lot of really valuable life lessons in that, which is what he wanted. So he'd drive 30 miles into his dental practice and then come home and help.
The cows twice a day.
Yeah.
Some of those old school dairies, you talk to people that grew up with like a true farm where you had a dairy and you had to feed them. So you're doing hay.
You were tied to it.
You're tied to it. And man.
Yeah. And it was, I learned a lot. In fact, there was a really funny story one time. And especially in the winter when it was so cold, my older brother and I would pray that the generator, the power would go out and the generator wouldn't work. And it did. There was one day I remember, and we came walking back into the mud room and laid down on the couch and taking off. And Dad comes out. He says, "What are you guys doing?" I told him what had happened. He says, "You better pray that I get the generator working because otherwise you're milking 100 and some odd number of cows by hand." And we're like, please. Our prayers changed.
Now as a modern grandma, right? Think about this. Think about the work that they had to commit to teach the lesson of work.
Right. Yes.
I don't know that I can do that now.
You do it all the time.
I don't know.
You do.
I don't know that I could. I don't know
you
what
are always into new things and
I know
doing
I'm
stuff.
all new things, but like saying, hey, let's go to have a 150 cow dairy.
And horses and pigs and chickens. We had all this stuff.
Just so
moving
I can
pipe.
teach you how to work.
I know. And it
I
did.
get tired thinking about that.
Yeah,
we have a farm and we do some
amazing.
stuff, but it's just so much work. But it's part of our heritage, right? I mean, that's what makes.
But that's
what
my
builds
parents.
the character, right?
Yeah, that's why I have the work ethic I have and the servant
Your
heart
folks still
that I
around?
have. What's that?
Are they still around?
They're not. I lost them both
did?
during the campaign. I lost my dad. I had announced April 10th of 2017 that I was going to run, and he was gone by the end of that month, the 27th. And then my mom passed on March, 11 months later.
Oh, my word. I'm sorry.
It was a tough time.
How many years were they married?
At that point, over 50.
Yeah.
Let me think, 50. Let's see, they were married.
That happens a lot in law. You know what I mean? It's just, I think that once one goes and
they were young, though. They were both a couple months shy of their 73rd.
Oh, you're kidding me.
No, cancer took both of them. My dad had a brain tumor that we knew about for 8 years. And so we were blessed to have him for longer than we thought. And then Mom, pancreatic cancer took her.
Oof.
Not long after Dad, which
pancreatic cancer
it was awful.
Yeah, it's so fast.
And it's mean.
Yeah.
It hurt so bad. That was hard to watch. In fact, you were so kind during the, I don't know if you remember this, but it's something I will never forget. But you pulled me aside at an event one time and said, because you knew about what was happening with my mom, and you said, if you ever need anything, even a mode of transportation to get you down to Southeast Idaho quickly if something turns on you.
I remember that.
I will never forget it, and I want to thank you for it.
You're awesome.
Ditto.
You're the best. We go through these experiences, and I know during those experiences, like, because we were in it together, you're like, what the heck am I doing, right?
Right.
But I think you develop bonds with people that are really cool. They're awesome. And I've really enjoyed watching you lead. Your reputation at the Association of Cities is they needed a leader like you during a time like now.
Thank you.
It's not getting easier, but they got the right person to.
Thanks. It's so
lead.
rewarding. I get to work with some of the best people. Well,
Yeah.
I love them.
Yeah, and you got a good team over there. You have Lance over there now?
Yes, I hope he stays.
Yeah,
he's
awesome.
such a great man.
They just had another baby, right?
Yeah, cutest little girl. Yeah, he's got a little boy and a little girl, and such a great family.
Oh, that's great.
I love his wife. She's a sweetheart too.
Kelley, thank you. If there's ever anything we can do, we'll spread the word.
Please do.
And thanks for all you do.
Thanks for having me on. I know that it took a little bit of a different turn than what we had expected, but I always enjoy visiting with you. And ICEN is such an important project, and I hope more people will get involved. It's an important topic.
Thanks, everybody.